USS England, the greatest submarine hunter in naval history prologue, a record that stands alone. In the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean during World War II, where steel titans clashed beneath tropical skies and the fate of nations hung in the balance, one modest destroyer escort accomplished what no other warship in naval history had achieved before or since. This is the extraordinary tale of USS England, a vessel that in just 12 days sank 6 enemy submarines, establishing a record so remarkable that it remains unmatched to this day. Between May 19th and May 31st, 1944, this single American warship systematically hunted down and destroyed an entire line of Japanese submarines, changing the course of naval warfare and demonstrating the deadly effectiveness of new anti-submarine technology. The story of USS England is not merely a tale of technological superiority or tactical brilliance, but a profound testament to the convergence of human courage, intelligence breakthroughs, and innovation under the most extreme conditions imaginable. Part 1. The Codebreakers Discovery, May 13, 1944, The Intercept. The story begins not with thunderous guns or dramatic sea battles, but in the quiet, methodical work of American codebreakers operating from a nondescript building in Pearl Harbor. On May 13th, 1944, the Fleet Radio Unit Pacific FRUPAC, successor to Commander Joseph Rockefeller's legendary station HYPO, intercepted a routine Japanese radio transmission. The message, sent from submarine I-16 to the commander of Japanese Submarine Division 7, contained what seemed like mundane operational details. An estimated time of arrival off Bougainville in the Solomon Islands, scheduled for 2,200 hours on May 22nd. But to the trained eyes of American intelligence officers, this intercepted message represented something far more valuable, an opportunity to strike at the heart of Japan's underwater fleet. The ultra-secret, Breaking JN-25, the intelligence operation that made England's success possible, had its roots in years of painstaking work by American cryptanalysts. Since the early days of the war, teams of mathematicians, linguists, and puzzle solvers had labored in secrecy to break Japanese naval codes. Their work, conducted in windowless rooms filled with IBM tabulating machines and mountains of paper, had already contributed to American victories at Midway and in the Solomon Islands. But never before had decoded intelligence been used so directly and effectively in anti-submarine warfare. The process of breaking the Japanese naval code JN-25 required not just mathematical brilliance, but also deep cultural understanding and linguistic expertise. Each message had to be intercepted and recorded, analyzed for patterns, painstakingly decoded using techniques combining mechanical computation with human intuition. The decoded intelligence was immediately transmitted through secure channels to the Third Fleet, and from there to Commander Hamilton Haynes, who commanded Escort Division 39 stationed at Tulagi in the Solomon Islands. Haynes was a veteran destroyer commander who had seen action in the Atlantic before being transferred to the Pacific. His experience hunting German U-boats would prove invaluable in the coming engagement. May 18th, assembling the hunter-killer group. Haynes wasted no time organizing a response. He ordered the formation of a 3-ship hunter-killer task group, selecting the best anti-submarine vessels available for this critical mission. The group would consist of 3 Buckley-class destroyer escorts: USS George D-697, Commander Fred W., Dusty Robbins USS Raby D-698, Lieutenant Commander James S. Scott; USS England D-635, Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton. England was temporarily detached from Escort Division 40 at Purvis Bay on Florida Island to join this urgent mission. All 3 ships departed Purvis Bay on May 18, 1944, with Commander Haynes embarked aboard George as the officer in tactical command. The selection of these 3 ships was no accident. Each had been specifically equipped and trained for anti-submarine warfare, and their crews had spent months perfecting their skills in the dangerous waters around the Solomon Islands. Part 2. The strategic picture, the NA line, Japan's last defense. That same day the task force departed, additional radio intelligence revealed a disturbing development. The Japanese were establishing a scouting line of 7 submarines, designated the NA line, stretching between the Admiralty Islands north of New Guinea and Truk in the Caroline Islands. This submarine picket line was positioned directly across the route that American carriers were expected to use in their next major operation. The Japanese strategic dilemma. The Japanese High Command was anticipating new Allied landings, but remained uncertain about the target. Would it be the Marianas, the Western Caroline Islands, the western end of New Guinea? The strategic thinking behind the Japanese submarine deployment reflected the desperate situation facing the Imperial Navy in mid-1944. With their carrier force decimated and their island bases increasingly isolated, submarines represented one of the few remaining tools for gathering intelligence and potentially disrupting American operations. The NA line was conceived as an early warning system that would give the Japanese fleet time to respond to American moves. Each submarine was assigned a specific patrol area with orders to remain on station and report any American naval movements. The fatal flaw: the rigid nature of these assignments, so different from the flexible patrol areas used by American submarines, would prove fatal. Operation Ego, the decisive battle that never was. Japanese strategic planners, analyzing recent American carrier strikes supporting General Douglas MacArthur's westward advance along New Guinea's northern coast, concluded that Western New Guinea was the most likely target. In response, Admiral Somu Toyota, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, issued orders for Operation Ego, intended to be the decisive naval battle that would halt the American advance and protect Japan's inner defense perimeter. The execution of this plan would ultimately lead to catastrophic Japanese defeats in what history would remember as the Battle of the Philippine Sea and the Marianas Turkey Shoot, where Japan would lose 3 aircraft carriers and hundreds of irreplaceable pilots in June 1944. The coordinate intercept, breaking the code. In a decision that would prove fatal, 7 Japanese submarines were assigned to specific fixed positions along the NA line rather than being given flexible operating areas as American submarines typically were. The chain of events that would doom these submarines began when Japanese forces intercepted an American aircraft's contact report on submarine RO-104. In response, the Japanese promptly radioed orders to the entire NA line to shift their positions 60 nautical miles to the southeast, transmitting specific coordinates for each submarine's new position. This seemingly routine operational message was intercepted by American radio intelligence and immediately forwarded to the Joint Intelligence Center Pacific Ocean Area, JICPOA, where cryptanalysts worked feverishly to break out the coordinates. The breakthrough. Though the process was complex and required careful analysis, the American codebreakers successfully extracted the precise positions of each submarine in the NA line. For the first time in the Pacific War, this ultra-secret intelligence would be sanitized and shared directly with anti-submarine forces, giving them an unprecedented advantage. The intelligence proved remarkably accurate. In each case, the Japanese submarines would be found within 50 nautical miles, and often much closer to exactly where the decoded messages indicated they would be. The security risk. The decision to share this intelligence with tactical units represented a significant risk. If the Japanese realized their codes were compromised, they might change them, depriving the Allies of a crucial advantage. Elaborate precautions were taken to disguise the source. Cover stories were prepared, attributing submarine discoveries to aerial reconnaissance or routine patrols. The destroyer escort crews were told they were acting on aerial sighting reports. They never knew their success was enabled by one of the war's most closely guarded secrets. Part 3. The ships and their heroes, the Buckley class, purpose-built submarine hunters. The 3 destroyer escorts of the hunter-killer group were all relatively new Buckley-class vessels, part of a massive wartime construction program that would eventually produce 154 of these specialized anti-submarine warships, 148 completed, some serving with the British Royal Navy under Lend-Lease. Specifications: displacement, 1,400 tons standard, 1,740 tons full load length, 306 feet beam, 37 feet draft, 11 feet propulsion. Diesel-electric for diesel engines, 2 electric motors, speed, 24 knots maximum range, 6,000 nautical miles at 12 knots crew, 15 officers, 198 enlisted men. The Buckley class represented a compromise between capability and mass production. Smaller and less expensive than fleet destroyers, they could be built quickly in commercial shipyards by workers with limited experience. Yet they packed enough firepower and anti-submarine equipment to be deadly submarine hunters. Armament: 3x3-inch/50 caliber guns, 1x triple mount 21-inch torpedo tubes, 2x stern depth charge racks, 8x K-gun depth charge projectors, 1x Mark 10 Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar, the game changer, named for heroes. Each ship had been named to honor a fallen hero, carrying forward the legacy of American servicemen who had made the ultimate sacrifice. USS George, D-697, named for Seaman Second Class Eugene F. George, posthumously awarded the Navy Cross for his heroic actions as an anti-aircraft gunner aboard heavy cruiser USS San Francisco during the brutal naval battle of Guadalcanal on November 12 to 13, 1942, when a damaged Japanese G-4M Betty bomber, already aflame from San Francisco's anti-aircraft fire, deliberately aimed for the cruiser's gun positions in a suicide attack. Seaman George and his fellow gunners stood their ground, continuing to fire until the moment of impact. The bomber crashed into San Francisco's bridge structure, killing Admiral Daniel Callahan and his staff. George and several other gunners died at their posts, never wavering. All were awarded the Navy Cross. USS Raby, D-698, named for Rear Admiral James Joseph Raby, who had earned the Navy Cross during World War I while commanding transatlantic convoy operations, including the very first convoy to cross the Atlantic under American escort. Raby had been a pioneer in anti-submarine warfare during the First World War, developing many of the tactics and procedures still in use. His experience had proven that convoys, properly escorted, could defeat the submarine menace. Tragically, Admiral Raby was killed in an automobile accident in 1934 while serving as Commandant of the Charleston Naval District. USS England, D-635. England carried perhaps the most poignant history of all. She was named for Ensign John Charles England, a young naval officer killed during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The story of Ensign England. England, just 4 days shy of his 21st birthday, had volunteered to work in USS Oklahoma's radio room that fateful morning, trading shifts with a friend so the other man could spend more time with his family arriving in Hawaii. England himself was eagerly awaiting the arrival of his wife and 3-week-old daughter, whom he had never seen, when Japanese torpedoes struck the battleship, and she began to capsize. Ensign England initially escaped to the deck. The scene that greeted him was one of unimaginable chaos. Oklahoma was rolling over, trapping hundreds of men inside her hull. But remembering the men still trapped in the radio room below, England made a fateful decision. He returned to the sinking ship's interior. 3 times. 3 times he descended into the capsizing battleship, each time successfully guiding a trapped sailor to safety through passages rapidly filling with water and oil. The ship's electrical system had failed, plunging the interior into darkness. England navigated by touch and memory, fighting against rushing water and the ship's increasing list. The 4th descent. On his 4th attempt to rescue his shipmates, Ensign England disappeared into Oklahoma's flooding compartments and was never seen again. He was one of 429 officers and men who perished aboard Oklahoma that day. The tragedy of USS Oklahoma. As the ship capsized, hundreds of men were trapped in air pockets within her hull. For days after the attack, salvage workers could hear tapping from inside the ship as trapped sailors signaled for help. Heroic efforts were made to cut through the hull and rescue survivors. 32 men were eventually saved. But for most, including Ensign England, there would be no rescue. Final honor. Initially buried among the unknown casualties at Punchbowl National Cemetery in Hawaii, Ensign England's remains would not be identified until 2016, when advances in DNA technology finally allowed him to be returned home to Colorado Springs, where he was reinterred next to his parents. Though he received only a Purple Heart for his sacrifice, his extraordinary heroism would be commemorated through not one, but 2 warships bearing his name, D-635, and the later guided missile cruiser CG-22. Part 4. The revolutionary weapon the Hedgehog, a game changer. The Hedgehog represented a revolution in anti-submarine warfare, addressing fundamental flaws that had plagued submarine hunters since World War I. Development. Developed by the British Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development in 1941 and first deployed in 1942, the Hedgehog had only recently become widely available to American forces in late 1943. The weapon's development had been driven by desperate necessity during Britain's darkest hours, when U-boats were sinking merchant ships faster than they could be replaced. How it worked. The weapon consisted of 24 projectiles arranged in 6 rows of 4, mounted on a trainable platform that could fire them in an elliptical pattern 200 to 300 yards ahead of the attacking ship. Each projectile, weighed 65 pounds, carried a 35-pound charge of TNT or Torpex. Explosive was fired in a carefully timed sequence, so all 24 impacted the water simultaneously, created a deadly pattern approximately 140 feet by 120 feet in area. The name Hedgehog came from the weapon's appearance. When loaded, the spigot mortars protruding from the launcher resembled the spines of the small mammal. The revolutionary difference. Contact fuses. What made the Hedgehog revolutionary was its contact-fused warheads. Unlike traditional depth charges, which detonated at preset depths using hydrostatic fuses, regardless of whether they were near a submarine, each Hedgehog projectile would only explode on direct contact with a solid object. Advantages. 1. Immediate feedback. Success or failure was immediately apparent. If projectiles hit a submarine, there would be explosions. If all missed, there would be silence, no more waiting 20-plus minutes scanning for oil or debris. 2. Sonar continuity. Traditional depth charges created massive explosions whether they hit or not. These detonations deafened the attacking ship's sonar for many minutes. Sound disturbances could take up to 15 minutes to dissipate. The Hedgehog solved this problem. If projectiles missed, no explosions occurred. The attacking ship could maintain continuous sonar contact. Immediate follow-up attacks were possible. 3. Fast reload. The Hedgehog could be reloaded in approximately 3 minutes. Traditional depth charge attacks required much longer reload time. Submarines that survived the first attack often escaped during long reloads. 4. No warning. The Hedgehog fired ahead rather than being dropped over the stern. Submarines had no warning. An attack was underway until projectiles were already in the water. Projectiles took about 7 seconds to sink to 200 feet. No time for evasive action with traditional stern-dropped depth charges. Experienced submarine captains could predict when they entered minimum sonar range and execute sharp evasive maneuvers. Statistics. British analysis showed that during World War II, an average of 60 traditional depth charge attacks were required to sink one submarine in the early war period. This ratio was even worse, sometimes over 100 attacks per kill with the Hedgehog. This ratio improved dramatically to approximately 1 submarine sunk for every 5 to 6 attacks, a 10-fold improvement in lethality. Although each Hedgehog projectile carried less explosive power than a standard depth charge, a direct hit from even a single projectile was usually sufficient to breach a submarine's pressure hull and send it to the bottom. Part 5. The hunt begins. Victim number 1, I-16, May 19, 1944. The submarine's history. I-16 was no ordinary vessel, but a veteran of 9 war patrols with a distinguished, if ultimately tragic, combat record. A Type C-1 submarine, one of the largest in the Japanese fleet, I-16 was 358 feet long and displaced 3,561 tons submerged. She was specially equipped to carry a Type A midget submarine on her deck. Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941. I-16 achieved a unique place in history by launching the very first submarine attack of the Pacific War. Under command of Lieutenant Junior Grade Yokoyama Masaharu, I-16's midget submarine was launched at 0042, several hours before the Pearl Harbor air attack, attempting to penetrate harbor defenses and attack American warships from within. Though Yokoyama's craft never returned and his fate remained unknown, I-16 received radio transmissions believed to be from him on the afternoon of December 7th, reporting a successful attack, and another early on December 8th indicating the craft could not navigate. Post-war analysis suggested none of the midget submarines successfully attacked American ships at Pearl Harbor. Of the 5 launched that day, 1 was sunk by destroyer USS Ward, the war's opening shots. 1 was destroyed inside the harbor by USS Monaghan. 1 ran aground. Its sole survivor became America's first Japanese POW. 2 simply vanished. None of the 5 midget submarines returned to their mother ships. Of the 10 crewmen, only 1 survived the war as a prisoner. Madagascar, May 30th, 1942. 6 months later, I-16 achieved what had eluded her at Pearl Harbor, a successful midget submarine attack. Operating in the Indian Ocean against British forces at Diego Suarez, Madagascar, I-16 launched another midget submarine commanded by Ensign Iwasa Katsasuk. The craft successfully penetrated the British anchorage and fired its torpedoes, scoring a hit on battleship HMS Ramillies that caused severe damage. The 29,150-ton battleship took on 1,800 tons of water and was nearly lost, though Ramillies survived thanks to excellent damage control and would go on to bombard German positions during D-Day. The attack demonstrated I-16's capability for launching devastating surprise attacks. The midget submarine also sank tanker British Loyalty before being lost with its crew. Final mission. On May 14, 1944, I-16 departed Truk Lagoon under command of Lieutenant Commander Takeuchi Yoshitaka, carrying a cargo of rice in 75-pound rubber bags intended for the starving Japanese garrison at Binon-Bougainville. The garrison there, 40,000 Japanese troops, had been bypassed by American forces and cut off since November 1943. Conditions had become desperate. Men were dying of starvation and disease daily. Incidents of cannibalism had been reported, but I-16's departure transmission, intercepted and decoded by American intelligence, had sealed her fate. The attack, May 19, 1944. On the afternoon of May 19th, an Allied reconnaissance aircraft, a consolidated PBY Catalina, spotted I-16 on the surface north of Bougainville, confirming the intelligence that had brought the hunter-killer group to these waters. The 3 destroyer escorts immediately formed a line abreast and commenced a coordinated sonar sweep of the area. At 1,335 hours, England's sonar operator reported contact with a submerged submarine at a range of 1,350 yards. The hunt was on. The battle. I-16 immediately commenced standard Japanese submarine evasion tactics. Radical changes in depth and direction, sudden speed changes, sharp turns designed to throw off the attacking ship's targeting solution. Lieutenant Commander Takeuchi was fighting for his life and the lives of his 106 crew members. Lieutenant Commander Pendleton brought England in for her first attack run. First Hedgehog salvo. Miss I-16 successfully evaded second attack. Miss submarine diving deep and turning sharply third attack. One hit, but I-16's strong hull absorbed the damage fourth attack. Miss, violently maneuvering submarine. By now, the hunt had been going on for over an hour. The tension aboard England was palpable. The kill, on the fifth attack run, at 1,435 hours. England's Hedgehog crew had learned from their previous attempts. They had noticed patterns in I-16's evasion tactics. Multiple projectiles found their mark. The massive underwater explosion that followed was so powerful it lifted England's stern completely out of the water, throwing men to the deck and rattling the entire ship. The explosion was heard and felt on the other destroyer escorts thousands of yards away. 20 minutes later, oil and debris began rising to the surface. Rice bags, pieces of wood cork, insulation, personal effects. A sailor's cap, pages from a Japanese book, a wooden sandal. The submarine that had launched the first attack at Pearl Harbor was gone, taking all 107 officers and men to their deaths in the service of a lost cause. The NA line submarines deploy. Meanwhile, the 7 submarines of the NA line had departed Saipan around May 17, 1944, to take up their assigned positions. Ceremony. The departure had been marked by a ceremony attended by Vice Admiral Takagi himself, who exhorted the submarine commanders to do their duty for the Emperor. Each captain received a ceremonial cup of sake white headband inscribed with patriotic slogans. They knew the odds against their survival were high. The RO-class boats. All 7 were RO-class boats, type RO, 100 submarines, much smaller than I-16. Originally designed for coastal defense, 760 tons, displacement armed with 4-bow torpedo tubes, 8 torpedoes total, plus a 76mm deck gun equipped with type 22 radar detectors, but lacked radar themselves. This made them poorly suited for the reconnaissance mission they'd been assigned. Their job was to spot American carrier forces and report movements, but without radar, they would have to spend dangerous amounts of time on the surface using visual lookouts. Grim statistics. Of the 20 type RO, 100 submarines Japan would build during the war. Not a single one would survive to see the surrender. Victim number 2, RO 106, May 22, 1944. Combat history. RO 106 had compiled a notable war record. On July 18, 1943, during operations in the Solomon Islands, she had torpedoed American tank landing ship LST-342 in Blanche Channel near New Georgia. The torpedo detonated the LST's ammunition stores, causing a catastrophic explosion that blew the ship in half. Among the 121 men killed were the ship's entire mess division of African-American stewards and cook's lieutenant commander Mellon Barkley, the renowned artist who had created many of the war's most famous recruiting posters before volunteering for combat duty. RO 106 had survived serious damage from airdropped depth charges in October 1943 and returned to service after repairs. The attack, May 22, 1944, pre-dawn. At 0350 hours, Georgia's radar operator detected a surface contact that proved to be RO 106. The submarine was running on the surface, recharging batteries under cover of darkness. George illuminated the submarine with her 24-inch searchlight, catching her completely by surprise. Her Type 22 radar detector had failed to function, leaving her blind to the approaching destroyer escort. Despite the surprise, RO 100 SXS crew reacted quickly, crash diving beneath the surface before George could bring her guns to bear. The dive took less than 40 seconds, well within Japanese Navy standards, but it wasn't fast enough to completely escape. The hunt. George launched a Hedgehog attack at 0415, MISS at 0425. England gained sonar contact as RO 106 attempted to escape. The submarine was making 8 knots, zigzagging violently while changing depth. England's first Hedgehog attack. Miss. Fatal error. Then the submarine made what may have been a fatal tactical error. RO 106 reversed course and turned bow on to England, possibly attempting to fire torpedoes at her attacker. This maneuver presented a perfect target for the Hedgehog. Not understanding how the new weapon system worked, that it fired ahead rather than being dropped over the stern, the submarine commander had inadvertently positioned his boat directly in the Hedgehog's kill zone. The kill. England's second attack scored at least 3 direct hits. The explosions would have been catastrophic inside the submarine. Hull breached in multiple places, water rushing in at tremendous pressure electrical systems, shorting out in showers of sparks. The submarine broke up, immediately her pressure hull collapsing as she plunged toward the ocean floor. RO 106 was lost with all 49 hands. The entire action, from first radar contact to the submarine's destruction, had taken just 36 minutes. Victim number 3, RO 104, May 23, 1944. Background: RO 104, under command of Lieutenant Hisashi Izubuchi, had spent most of her previous patrols in the frigid waters of the North Pacific and Aleutian Islands, a stark contrast to the tropical waters where she now hunted. During operations in the Solomons in late 1943, RO 104 had performed a remarkable rescue mission on November 3, 1943, saving 75 survivors of Japanese light cruiser Sendai after she was sunk in a night surface action with American cruisers during the Battle of Empress Augusta Bay. Among those rescued was Rear Admiral Baron Matsuji Aijuan, commander of Japanese destroyer Squadron 3, whose survival was considered vital to the Imperial Navy. The attack, May 23, 1944. At 0604 hours, an Allied aircraft spotted RO 104 on the surface approximately 250 nautical miles north-northwest of Caviang, New Ireland. This time, the submarine's radar detector worked, giving just enough warning for an emergency dive before the destroyer escorts could close to gun range. The long hunt. Once submerged, RO 104's captain employed every evasion technique he knew. Violent evasive maneuvers, sophisticated acoustic deception, transmitting bursts of tuned sound impulses designed to jam Raby's sonar. The tactic worked initially. Raby made 4 Hedgehog attacks over 2 hours. All MISSED George took over, made 5 Hedgehog runs. All missed. RO 104's captain was fighting for his crew's lives with skill and determination. Each evasion maneuver consumed precious battery power, and the submarine's air was growing foul with carbon dioxide. England's turn. Finally, at 0819, England moved in. The first Hedgehog attack missed, but England's sonar team had been carefully observing RO 104's evasion patterns for over 2 hours. They noticed submarine tended to turn to starboard while diving preferred depths between 200 to 250 feet, accelerated just before making major course changes. The kill. On the second attack, England's team had precisely calculated RO 104's next move. Between 10 and 12 projectiles found their mark. The resulting underwater explosion was followed by the unmistakable sounds of a submarine breaking up. The screech of tearing metal, the thunder of imploding compartments, then silence. It wasn't until 10:45 that debris finally reached the surface, confirming RO 104 and all 58 hands had been lost. The debris field was extensive. Wooden decking cork, insulation, clothing oil, slick a life ring with Japanese characters, definitive proof of the kill. Victim number 4, RO 116, May 24, 1944. The newest submarine, RO 116, was relatively new, on only her second war patrol under command of Lieutenant Commander Shibuya Kunio. The submarine had been commissioned just 6 months earlier, and her crew was still gaining experience. Many were recent graduates of the submarine school at Kure, young men who had joined the Navy filled with dreams of glory, but were now facing the harsh reality of a war Japan was losing. The attack, May 24, 1944. At 0120 hours, George gained radar contact at the remarkable range of 17,000 yards, nearly 10 miles, approximately 225 nautical miles north-northwest of Caveing. This exceptional detection range was due to ideal atmospheric conditions that enhanced radar propagation. The Hunt, RO 116, dove immediately, but her crash dive was slower than it should have been, a sign of her crew's relative inexperience. At 0125, George gained sonar contact at just 750 yards. The submarine employed the same desperate tactics as her predecessors. Violent rudder shifts, radical depth changes, sophisticated sonar jamming. These tactics proved temporarily successful. George made multiple runs, but RO 116 managed to evade England, moved in, and made 2 aborted Hedgehog runs when the targeting solution fell apart. The kill. But on the 3rd attempt at 0214, England's crew had RO 116's number. At least 3 projectiles struck home. The submarine's destruction was swift, but oddly quiet, none of the massive secondary explosions that had marked previous kills. This suggested RO 116's torpedoes had not detonated. RO 116 simply broke apart and sank, taking all 56 hands with her into the depths. Victim number 5, RO 108, May 26, 1944. A dangerous opponent, RO 108, commanded by Lieutenant Ori Kenichi, had already proven herself dangerous to American forces. USS Henley, October 3, 1943. On October 3, 1943, RO 108 had fired a spread of 4 torpedoes at 3 American destroyers that presented an overlapping target in one gulf off New Guinea. It had been a textbook attack. USS Smith detected the torpedo wakes and successfully evaded, but USS Henley was not so fortunate. 2 torpedoes struck her port side amidships in the number 1 fire room, breaking the destroyer's keel. The hits were devastating. Explosion ruptured fuel tanks, massive flooding broke, the ship's back Henley broke in 2 and sank rapidly, 15 men killed, 52 wounded. Smith and USS Reed counterattacked, but RO 108 escaped, diving deep and running silent. Near-death experience. Later, on December 17, 1943, RO 108 was caught on the surface by a PBY Catalina while recharging batteries. The aircraft's depth charge attack caused serious damage. The submarine went down by the stern, taking on water through damaged hull plates. But somehow her crew managed to save her through heroic damage control, working in flooded compartments to shore up bulkheads and patch leaks. She returned to service after months of repairs at Truk. The attack, May 26, 1944. At 2,303 hours, Raby gained radar contact on RO 108 at 15,000 yards, approximately 110 nautical miles northeast of Seattler Harbor at Manus Island. England also gained radar contact before the submarine dove. Once submerged, England gained sonar contact at 1,650 yards. Swift kill. Raby was vectored in for the first attack, but her Hedgehog salvo missed. The submarine had turned inside Raby's attack run. At 23:23, England commenced her attack run. This time, there would be no prolonged hunt. England's Hedgehog scored between 4 and 6 hits on the first salvo. The multiple explosions would have torn RO 108 apart instantly. The submarine's hull, already weakened by her previous battle damage, couldn't withstand the multiple direct hits. RO 108 went down with all 53 hands. Japanese intelligence discovers the disaster. May 27, 1944. By now, Japanese naval intelligence was becoming alarmed. On May 27th, the Japanese 6th Fleet intercepted and decoded American naval communications indicating several submarines had been sunk north of the Admiralty Islands. The American reports were described by Japanese intelligence as increasingly jubilant in tone. Warnings sent, Warning messages were immediately transmitted to the remaining submarines of the NA line, sent on multiple frequencies, and repeated several times to ensure reception. Results: RO-112 received warning, cleared the area, survived only to be sunk by USS Batfish off Luzon on February 11, 1945, all 61 hands lost. RO-109 received warning, escaped the killing zone, but was sunk by destroyer transport USS Horace, base off Okinawa on May 7, 1945, all hands lost. RO-105 either never received the warning or chose to remain at her assigned position. Victim number 6. RO-105, May 31, 1944. The last submarine, RO-105, under command of Lieutenant Junichi Ino, had sortied from Saipan on May 14, 1944, with the commander of Japanese Submarine Division 51, Captain Rhiannos Kato, embarked. The presence of a division commander aboard would have made it virtually impossible for Lieutenant Ino to abandon his patrol area without explicit orders. Previous close calls. During previous patrols, RO-105 had several close calls. August 12, 1943. Narrowly avoided 2 torpedoes fired by USS Tarpon in a stern shot through violent evasive action. September 1943, fired torpedoes at light cruiser USS Columbia, but missed when the cruiser detected and evaded. Had rescued several downed Japanese aviators at various times, earning gratitude of the Naval Air Service, replenishment, and reinforcement. After sinking RO-108, the 3 destroyer escorts had to replenish their heavily depleted stocks of Hedgehog projectiles. They proceeded to Seadler Harbor at Manus in the Admiralty Islands, where they quickly loaded ammunition and supplies. Upon departing, they joined a larger hunter-killer task group that had arrived in the area, centered on escort carrier USS Hoggett Bay, and including destroyers USS Hazelwood, USS McCord, USS Hirman, USS Hull Destroyer Escort, USS Spangler. The arrival of the carrier group added air power to the hunt. Hoggett Bay's aircraft could search vast areas and vector surface ships to submarine contacts. The final hunt, night of May 30th to 31st, 1944. During the night of May 30th to 31st, Hazelwood gained radar contact on what would prove to be RO-105. The submarine immediately dove and commenced evasive maneuvers that would continue for the next several hours in one of the most prolonged submarine hunts of the war. The all-night battle, RO-105's captain pulled every trick in the book in his desperate fight for survival. Discharged debris to create false sonar, targets released oil slicks to simulate damage-executed maneuvers, so violent they pushed the boat's hull to its structural limits. The hunt continued through the night, with multiple ships taking turns attacking. Hazelwood gained sonar contact, dropped conventional depth charges, explosions, sent geysers of water high into the air, no apparent effect on the submarine. George made several Hedgehog attacks, may have scored 3 hits with 1 salvo, yet, incredibly, the submarine continued maneuvering and fighting. The hits would have caused damage and casualties, but RO-105's crew maintained watertight integrity. Dawn, May 31st, 1944. As dawn broke on May 31st, Spangler and England joined the attack. The sunrise revealed a calm sea with an oil slick marking where the submarine had been hit, but RO-105 was still fighting. Spangler's attempt missed. Submarine made radical turn at last moment. Commander Haynes' famous order. At this point, Commander Haynes, still aboard George, transmitted a message that would become part of naval legend. "Oh hell, go ahead, England." It was both an acknowledgement of England's superior success rate and an expression of frustration at the submarine's stubborn refusal to die. England's crew, who had been watching their sister ships attack without success, were eager for their chance. England's devastating attack. England's crew had been observing RO-105's evasion patterns all night. They had noticed subtle patterns. a slight hesitation before major turns, a preference for certain depth bands when under attack. At 0736 hours, the Hedgehog salvo triggered a massive underwater explosion that dwarfed even the spectacular destruction of I-16. Between 6 and 10 projectiles found their mark, and the resulting detonations were followed by secondary explosions as RO-105's own torpedoes detonated. The violence of destruction, the violence of the explosion was extraordinary. A column of water shot hundreds of feet into the air. The shock wave could be felt through the hulls of ships miles away. RO-105 was literally blown apart, Captain Cato, and all 55 hands killed instantly. The oil slick that rose to the surface spread for miles, mixed with debris that included recognizable pieces of the submarine's hull, wooden decking, personal effects of the crew. It was a grim reminder of the totality of destruction that modern naval warfare could inflict. Part 6. The record that stands alone. 12 days, 6 submarines. In just 12 days, from May 19th to May 31st, 1944, USS England had sunk 6 Japanese submarines, a feat unparalleled in the history of anti-submarine warfare. The statistics, the achievement was all the more remarkable considering England was not a powerful destroyer, but a modest destroyer escort. She was just 5 months out of the shipyard. This was her first war patrol of the 7 submarines assigned to the NA line. 6 had been destroyed, 5 of them fell to England's Hedgehog. Only RO-109 escaped to be sunk less than a year later off Okinawa. The scorecard: I-16, May 19th, 5 attacks, 107 men lost. RO-106, May 22nd, 2 attacks, 49 men lost. RO-104, May 23rd, 2 attacks after 9 failed attacks by other ships, 58 men lost. RO-116, May 24th, 3 attacks, 56 men lost. RO-108, May 26th, 1 attack, 53 men lost. RO-105, May 31st, 2 attacks after all-night battle, 55 men lost. Total Japanese casualties: 378 officers and men. Recognition and honor: Admiral Ernest J. King's promise. Upon learning of the achievement, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Ernest J. King sent a message that carried the weight of a promise. There'll always be an England in the United States Navy. The message was both recognition of the ship's unprecedented achievement and tribute to Ensign John C. England, whose heroic sacrifice at Pearl Harbor had inspired the crew. Presidential Unit Citation. The crew of England was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, one of only 3 destroyer escort crews in World War II to receive this honor. The citation read in part, "For extraordinary heroism in action against enemy Japanese submarines in the Pacific War area from May 19th to 31st, 1944. The USS England's brilliant performance in this vital mission contributed materially to the successful operations of our forces and upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service." Personal awards. Lieutenant Commander Pendleton received the Navy Cross for his leadership during the submarine killing spree, though many historians have noted that his executive officer, Lieutenant John A. Williamson, deserved equal credit for the ship's remarkable tactical proficiency. Williamson had been the one conducting endless drills, refining attack procedures, and maintaining the crew's edge during long months of routine patrols. His contribution would be recognized when he later assumed command of the ship. Part 7. Strategic Impact Operation EGO, the misdirection. The strategic implications were even more significant than Navy leadership initially realized. Japanese misinterpretation. The loss of the NA line submarines initially convinced Japanese naval commanders that a large American force had passed through the area en route to the Western Carolines, or Western New Guinea, rather than the actual target, the Mariana Islands. Consequences. This misinterpretation caused Admiral Toyota to delay and misdirect the execution of Operation EGO. Japanese fleet units wasted precious fuel moving to wrong positions by the time they realized their error and repositioned to defend the Marianas. It was too late. The American invasion of Saipan began on June 15, 1944, catching the Japanese fleet out of position. The Battle of the Philippine Sea, June 19 to 20, 1944. The resulting Battle of the Philippine Sea saw the destruction of Japanese naval aviation as an effective force. The Marianas Turkey Shoot, in what American pilots called the Marianas Turkey Shoot, over 400 Japanese aircraft were shot down against minimal American losses. 3 Japanese carriers were sunk. Taiho, Shokaku, Hayo. The myth of Japanese naval aviation superiority was permanently shattered. Strategic consequences. The loss of the Marianas also brought American B-29 bombers within range of the Japanese home islands, sealing Japan's fate. The intelligence security question. Attempted secrecy. Although the U.S. Navy attempted to keep England's success secret to protect the source of the intelligence that had made it possible, Japanese naval intelligence correctly deduced that the loss of the submarines was due to American radio intelligence. Internal Japanese reports acknowledged that their codes had been compromised. Inexplicable denial. Yet, incredibly, they persisted in believing that their main naval codes remained secure. This denial would cost them dearly in the remaining year of the war as American codebreakers continued to read Japanese messages and direct American forces to intercept Japanese ships and submarines. Part 8. England's continuing service after the record. USS England continued her service throughout the war, though she would never again achieve the spectacular success of those 12 days in May 1944. Continued operations. Participated in numerous convoy escort missions, conducted anti-submarine patrols throughout the Pacific, supported amphibious operations at Leyte Gulf, Lingayen Gulf, and Okinawa, survived multiple kamikaze attacks. May 9, 1945. Near disaster. On May 9, 1945, while on radar picket duty off Okinawa, England was struck by a kamikaze aircraft. The attack killed 37 crewmen and wounded 25 others, nearly sinking the ship. Through heroic damage control efforts, the crew saved their ship and she limped back to port for repairs. The Admiral's promise kept. England was decommissioned on October 15, 1945, shortly after the war's end. But Admiral King's promise was kept. USS England, DLG 22/CG 22, a second USS England, a guided missile cruiser, was commissioned on December 7, 1963, the 22nd anniversary of Ensign England's death at Pearl Harbor. This ship served with distinction until decommissioned in 1994, ensuring that there was indeed always an England in the United States Navy for 53 years after the original's record-setting patrol. Part 9. Technical analysis: why England succeeded. England's unprecedented success can be attributed to a convergence of factors. 1. Superior intelligence. American codebreakers provided exact submarine positions, allowed England to position for optimal attacks, eliminated the hardest part of anti-submarine warfare, finding the enemy. 2. Revolutionary technology. The Hedgehog was a game-changer contact. Fuses eliminated sonar blindness fast. Reload time allowed rapid follow-up attacks. Forward-firing design prevented submarine evasion. 3. Crew excellence. Months of intensive training. Lieutenant Williamson's relentless drilling sonar operators who learned to read submarine evasion patterns. Hedgehog crews who adapted and improved with each attack. 4. Tactical learning. Each attack taught lessons applied to the next. Pattern recognition of submarine evasion tactics. Willingness to adapt and innovate. 5. Enemy mistakes. Japanese submarines assigned to fixed positions. Rigid adherence to patrol areas even after warnings. Predictable evasion patterns. Poor radio security that enabled American codebreaking. England's statistics. In 12 attacks across 6 submarines, with her sister ships making additional attacks. Success rate: 50%. 6 kills in approximately 12 final attacks by England, compared to 1.7% success rate for traditional depth charges, 30-fold improvement. Part X, the human element, the forgotten sailors. While England's record rightfully receives attention, we must remember the human cost. Japanese submariners, 378 officers and men died in the 6 submarines England sank. Young men, many barely out of training, fighting for a lost cause following orders to the death. Each one had a family, dreams, a life. Ensign John C. England, the ship's namesake, who gave his life saving others at age 20, never met his infant daughter, descended 3 times into a capsizing ship, disappeared on his 4th rescue attempt, lay in an unmarked grave for 75 years until DNA identified him in 2016. The crew of D-635, mostly young men in their late teens and early 20s, volunteers who signed up after Pearl Harbor, trained for months in anti-submarine warfare, faced death daily in submarine-infested waters, achieved something no other crew had or would again. Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton, the captain of England during her record patrol, deserves special recognition. Background: career Navy officer, experienced in anti-submarine warfare, under pressure, gave credit to his crew. Leadership style: let experts do their jobs, trusted his sonar operators, learned from each attack, never gave up on a contact. Post-war: continued naval career, retired as captain, remained close to England's crew, attended ship reunions until his death. Lieutenant John A. Williamson, England's executive officer, was perhaps equally responsible for the success. His contributions: conducted endless anti-submarine drills, refined attack procedures, maintained crew discipline and sharpness, analyzed each attack for lessons learned. Recognition: later assumed command of England, received Navy commendation credit, often overlooked in favor of Pendleton. Veterans insisted Williamson deserved equal credit. Part 11. Legacy and lessons: the record that will never be broken. USS England's record of 6 submarines in 12 days stands unmatched and will almost certainly never be broken. Why it's unbreakable? Modern anti-submarine warfare is different. Nuclear submarines are faster, quieter, and can stay submerged indefinitely. Submarines are rarer. Modern navies have far fewer submarines than World War II fleets. Weapons have changed. Modern anti-submarine weapons, torpedoes, missiles, are far more expensive and carried in smaller numbers. Submarine survival is better. Modern submarines are harder to find, and sink wars are different. No modern conflict has seen the massed submarine operations of WWII impact on naval warfare. England's success had profound effects on naval warfare. Immediate: validated the Hedgehog concept, led to increased production, changed anti-submarine tactics, proved value of signals intelligence. Long-term: established doctrine for hunter-killer groups, demonstrated importance of crew training, showed value of specialized anti-submarine vessels, proved that small ships with the right weapons could defeat larger opponents through intelligence revolution. England's patrol demonstrated the war-winning potential of signals intelligence. Before: ultra-intelligence, used primarily for strategic planning, rarely shared with tactical units, limited impact on day-to-day operations. After: intelligence could be safely shared with tactical commanders, direct impact on combat operations, model for future intelligence operations. Modern legacy: every modern Navy emphasizes signals intelligence. Intelligence-led operations are standard. England's patrol was a proof of concept. Lessons for today: the story of USS England offers timeless lessons. 1. Technology matters. The Hedgehog gave England a decisive advantage, but technology alone isn't enough. 2. Training matters. England's crew was well-drilled, and professional months of training paid off in days of combat. 3. Intelligence matters. Knowing where the enemy is solves half the problem, but intelligence must be acted upon. 4. Leadership matters. Pendleton and Williamson created a winning team. Good leadership multiplies other advantages. 5. Persistence matters. Some submarines took multiple attacks. England never gave up on a contact. 6. Teamwork matters. England worked with sister ship. Success was a team effort. Conclusion. Remembering England. The ship USS England D-635 served. Commissioned December 10th, 1943. Decommissioned October 15th, 1945. Service 22 months. Record 6 submarines in 12 days, May 19th to 31st, 1944. Battle stars 10 Presidential Unit Citation. Yes, the man. Ensign John Charles England, 1920 to 1941. Born September 11th, 1920. Died December 7th, 1941, age 21. 3 successful rescues before his death. Disappeared on 4th rescue attempt. Purple Heart recipient. 2 ships named in his honor. The legacy. The story of USS England ultimately transcends its specific historical moment to become something universal, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of mortal danger. Courage when lives hang in the balance. The power of teamwork and training. The decisive impact of intelligence and technology. The willingness of ordinary people to achieve extraordinary things. In the darkest hours of conflict, when nations clash and millions of lives hang in the balance, ordinary people can rise to meet extraordinary challenges. The crew of USS England did exactly that in May 1944, and their achievement will be remembered as long as naval history is studied and tales of courage at sea are told. Admiral King's promise. True to Admiral King's word, there was always an England in the United States Navy from 1943 to 1994, 51 years. While no 3rd USS England has been commissioned, the name lives on in naval history books. Anti-submarine warfare doctrine. The memories of veterans. The inspiration for future sailors. Final thoughts. In 12 days in May 1944, a small destroyer escort with a crew of young Americans, most barely out of their teens, achieved something that had never been done before and will never be done again. They hunted and destroyed 6 enemy submarines with methodical efficiency, proving that small ships could defeat large submarines. Technology and tactics could overcome numbers. American innovation could triumph over enemy experience. Courage and skill could achieve the impossible. USS England's record stands as a monument to the power of American industrial might, the effectiveness of signals intelligence, the value of superior technology, the importance of crew training, the courage of ordinary sailors doing extraordinary things. 6 submarines in 12 days. A record for the ages. A testament to the generation that saved the world. There'll always be an England in the United States Navy, and there will always be a place in naval history for the crew that achieved the impossible in those fateful 12 days of May 1944.